Welcome back to the weekend here on Sports Radio 910. It's that time once again for our weekly wildlife segment. Welcome back in for the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, Chris Dunnavant. Chris, we talked about it last week, your chance encounter with an FLW tournament champion, and sure enough, we were able to hook him for the show this week. Why don't you introduce our guests for this week on our wildlife segment?
Absolutely. It was a wonderful opportunity to meet Scott at the BP station in Mechanicsville, of all places. And now here we have him on the radio program. So it's great to have Scott Martin, FLW Tour Pro, and fishing show host of the Scott Martin Challenge. Now, Scott is one of the best FLW pros of all time. He's the second leading money winner on the FLW circuit, multiple tournament winner, including the recent Potomac River FLW tournament and last year's FLW Forest Wood Cup champion. So welcome, Scott Martin, to the show. Great to have you today.
Well, I appreciate you having me on today. It's been that was a cool little encounter. I was getting ready for a big flight back home, and it was a good chance. Matter of fact, I've got a big bass on right now. I'm on Lake Okeechobee fishing, and I'm honing my skills. And I've got one on as we speak. It's jumping. It's like a 4-pounder, and I've got it on. I'm almost got him in the boat. So you guys are good luck. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, Scott, congratulations on your most recent FLW Tour win on the Potomac, as Chris mentioned. And, boy, that was a narrow margin of victory. Just take us through that most recent event.
Well, I'll tell you what, you talk about a nail-biter. Yeah, I caught a big bag the first day and got a pretty substantial lead. And the rest of the week, I caught them pretty good, but my lead kept getting smaller and smaller every day. And it really felt good to pull it off that last little bit. I really was doubting it at the last hour of the day. I didn't get a really big bite, and I really thought I was going to lose the tournament because of that. And boy, what a nail biter to sit there and watch everybody weigh in, and knew that it was going to be super close. But to pull it off was awesome. It was that's what makes fishing so much fun: the excitement of just catching them, and the excitement of the weigh-ins, and all the cool stuff going on. It was really interesting.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you did on the Potomac that week to score the victory?
Sure. I had a pretty simple approach. I was fishing the grass beds. Potomac River is a really good place for fishing in the grass, the milfoil. And I was throwing chatterbaits and flipping the grass. And what I would do in the mornings on the high tide, the tidal river there, in the mornings I was taking a chatterbait, and I was on the high tide spots and slow rolling that chatterbait through that milfoil, and I was getting a couple really good bites every morning doing that. And then when the tide would get a little bit lower, I would put the chatterbait down, and I'd start flipping a worm. I'd flip a little bruiser, paddle-tail worm in the clumps of milfoil that I could see, visibly see. You need a good pair of polarized glasses because the grass wasn't topped all the way to the surface. And once that tide got low, I'd see where that grass was at, and I'd flip that worm in there, and I'd pick up several good fish each day doing that as well. So it was a kind of a 1-2 punch. It was a pretty simple approach, just really fishing the tide. Again, fishing the chatterbait in the mornings on the high tide, and then flipping it when the tide got low. And fished 2 areas, one down on the south end, down around Quad Creek, and the other place was over in Belmont Bay, which is up towards the north end of the lake. And it was a lot of fun. Caught a lot of fish. It's just a really great fishery. That's probably one of the best rivers in the Northeast, if not the best river in the Northeast.
Well, that sounds like a great strategy. Very simple approach, a good strategy. And speaking of strategy, recently we had David Dudley on the program, and he discussed with us his philosophy of tournament competition and winning. And you have, in recent years, the last 4 years, you've experienced a string of victories, starting with the 2009 FLW Tour on Lake Champlain, and then the 2010 series on Lake Okeechobee, last year's Forest Wood Cup, and, of course, this year's Potomac River event. And, with this victory the last 4 years, that puts you in a small circle of pros that have been able to accomplish a feat like that. What do you attribute this to, Scott? Do you have a philosophy or a fishing style that a mental approach that puts you consistently in the winner's circle?
I think you touched on a little bit. It's not the lures. It's not a lot of times even the places you're fishing. It's just confidence that's really helped me over the last 4 years. I've always wanted to stay very versatile. I never was the type of fisherman that said, man, I'm only going to throw a jig and I'm only going to throw a crankbait or pick out 4 or 5 lures that I feel like are good. I wanted to have, my abilities to be wide-ranging, meaning I could catch them on a drop shot, I could catch them flipping grass, I could catch them doing a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. And so over the last, 10 or 11 years, it's been a learning process. Fishing's always about learning. And so I feel like I've developed some of those techniques better over the last several years. So my confidence now is wide-ranging. I can get on a rattle trap bite and have a lot of confidence. I can get on a drop shot bite and have a lot of confidence. I can swim a jig and have a lot of, So I've really, it's taken years to do that because it's hard to get confidence and be good at a lot of different lures, but versatility and confidence is what wins tournaments. And I think that's been part of my big success over the last 4 years. It's just been able to be able to make stuff up and fish different lures. Every tournament's been a different type of technique. The championship, I was fishing in 25 and 30 foot of water. And, of course, at Potomac, I was fishing shallow grass. And at Lake Champlain, I was fishing smallmouth. So it's just a lot of different things that are going on. And that's helped me a bunch.
Scott Martin joined us here on The Weekend with Anthony Opperman, our weekly wildlife conversation, along with Chris Dunnavant from the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. Of course, Scott, one of the top money winners on the FLW Tour, and he's also the most recent victor on the tour at the Potomac event. And, obviously, Scott, everybody knows about your dad, Roland, and I wanted to get your thoughts on, why you decided to, I guess, stay in the family business. You look at athletes, across the board, no matter what the sport, and sometimes it's tough to follow in the footsteps of your dad when he's been so successful, but you've certainly been able to do that.
Well, as a young child, my dad every day made me get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go fish the lake, even if I didn't want to. He just forced me, and if I didn't, I got in trouble. I'm just kidding, It's growing up here in Lake Okeechobee, and we have a big marina down here, Roland Martin's Marina, and growing up around all the fishing guides, and of course, South Florida is a mecca for all types of fishing. So it's just in my blood. I mean, my mother is a very successful and accomplished lady angler. She fished the Bass and Gal circuit for many years, won the Bass and Gal Classic. So I've just been surrounded by it my whole life. And again, living down here in Lake Okeechobee and enjoying the great fishery we have down here, I've just really enjoyed the fishing itself and the competition of it and trying to figure out these bass. Like even today, let's take today, for example. I'm out on Lake Okeechobee showing a guy around for a tournament that's coming up for him, and we haven't caught that many fish. And I've kept moving around, and finally we've caught several here just while I've been on the phone with you, and he's got another one on right now. And so that's what's awesome. We haven't caught a lot of fish today, but we figured out what to do and where to go, and that little bit of success you have is what drives me as an angler.
It's funny, too, Chris, because we heard some similar sentiments echoed from David Dudley, the idea of tricking a fish and being able to have that mental ability to stick with it, change some strategies, make those adjustments. It all kind of sounds familiar.
Yes, the fishing is a real problem-solving puzzle, and you've got to figure them out, and that's a big part of the fun. And then when you're catching the fish, there's a real reward to figuring that out, solving that puzzle. So I think that's probably what Scott is experiencing today, or it's just that he needs to be talking to us more often, and that'll help him catch more fish.
Yeah, I've got a tournament next week at Kentucky Lake, guys. It starts on Thursday, so if you can call me around noon, we'll do another interview. I can catch a whole bunch of fish, maybe win the tournament.
Sounds great. Scott, we're talking about the Potomac, and as you said, it's recognized as one of the top fisheries in the Northeast, and we're just a couple hours here from the Potomac in Richmond, and some of our listeners may want to, after hearing you talk about the Potomac, they may want to give that a try. What would you recommend for folks that may be going up to the Potomac for the first time or have only fished it a few times? Where do you think they should start fishing, and what are some techniques that they should consider when they go up there?
Well, this time of the year, moving baits is really good on a frog bite. The frog bite is if you want to really get hooked on fishing, take a frog like a river to sea frog that's a little hollow-bodied frog and put it on a braided line, put it on like a 7.5 foot heavy action rod. Take that frog and go into some creeks like Mattawoman Creek, for example. A lot of good milfoil in there. Get in there on when the tide's starting to get low. Take that frog and throw it up in the thickest patches of grass you can find out in those flats and twitch it along, and you'll have these big, nice bass blowing up on it. It's so much fun. It's so visual. It's a big fight trying to get them out of all that grass. That's what I would do.
Well, that sounds great. I know I've done that before, and it is a thrill when they come up out of that thickest, heaviest stuff and eat that frog. It is a thrilling bite. There's no doubt about it.
If you want to hook somebody for life on fishing, take them frog fishing on the Potomac and Mattawoman Creek on low tide. You'll have some fun. You'll probably catch a snakehead or two as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. They're good. I hear they're good eating. Have you ever had one?
I've never eaten one, but they look scary to me. I don't know if I want to eat it.
Again, Scott Martin joined us here on the weekend with Anthony Opperman. Scott, I know that you've got a busy day planned to head fishing, so I'll let you get back to it. Certainly want to thank you again, though, for taking the time for us this morning. And, again, if it kind of tails off for you, just let Chris or myself know, and we'll get back on the phone.
That's right. I appreciate it, guys.
Scott,
thank you. Day. Thanks for having me on.
Scott, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.
Again, that's Scott Martin. He's the most recent winner on the FLW Tour, taking home the tournament championship on the Potomac. Scott Martin, along with David Dudley, back-to-back.
You know, really think about it. The top two anglers, and David is the number one angler, and Scott's the number two in the current points, but also in the all-time hunting list. So here we have the top two FLW anglers on the show. That's really exciting.
And certainly, you know, the common denominator, it seems, is both of these guys. You know, you heard David talk about writing a one-page report on any given bite. Well, it sounds like Scott, too. The very cerebral guys in the way that they think about fishing and their approaches to fishing. But yet at the same time, still two guys that, even though there's a lot going through their heads and a lot of approaches and things like that, both guys like to keep it simple as well.
That's right. You know, and the key to fishing, it's your best lure, your best tool is between your ears. I mean, that is really what it comes down to. And those guys that excel in fishing, they're not just going down the bank and just throwing different baits. They're really thinking about things, and that separates them from other anglers.
Well, as always, certainly appreciate you reaching out, making those contacts and connections. Again, it just happened to work out that way at the BP station, but we appreciate you taking the initiative, going up, and at least just starting the conversation with Scott. And, I mean, I'm sure that we'll be seeing him on the fishing spot coming up, too.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and, I mean, I can't take credit for it. I mean, I just pulled up to the gas station, and there he was, and I said, I can't let this go. I've got to go up and talk to him. And so it's great. I'm glad I did. Here we got a chance to have him on the radio. Sounds great.
And as we bring this segment to a close, more guests coming up next week, right?
Yes, we're going to have Steve Living. He's coming in from the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. He's our birding expert. So he's going to talk to us about the birding trail and birding in the Richmond area and things that folks might want to get involved in. You know, the department, we're not just about hunting and fishing and boating. We cover all wildlife. So we want to bring some folks in that can touch on some of those things and share, you know, kind of the wide variety of the department offers.
Yeah, Chris Dunnavant from the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. Certainly want to thank Scott Martin, part of the FLW Tour, also host of the Scott Martin Challenge. What an honor to have him on this morning here on the weekend. Chris, as always, appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, and we'll catch up next week.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anthony.
Yeah, that's Chris. Join us for our weekly wildlife conversation. When we come back, I have my game plan for the weekend. Stay tuned. That's next here on Sports Radio 910.
The show is almost over, but the weekend is just getting started. More of The Weekend with Anthony Opperman is next on Sports Radio 910.